Volume 3. Marius. Frontispiece Volume 3. Title page Volume 3. Book 1st Paris studied in its Adam. Chapter I Parvulus. Paris has a child, and the forest has a bird, the bird is called the sparrow, the child is called the gamin. Couple these two ideas which contain, the one all the furnace, the other all the dawn, strike these two sparks together, Paris, childhood, there leaps out from them a little being. Homuncio, Plautus would say. This little being is joyous. He has not food every day, and he goes to the play every evening, if he sees good. He has no shirt on his body, no shoes on his feet, no roof over his head, he is like the flies of heaven, who have none of these things. He is from 7 to 13 years of age, he lives in bands, roams the streets, lodges in the open air, wears an old pair of trousers of his father's, which descend below his heels, an old hat of some other father, which descends below his ears, a single suspender of yellow listing, he runs, lies in wait, rummages about, wastes time, blackens pipes, swears like a convict, haunts the wine shop, knows thieves, calls gay women thou, talks slang, sings obscene songs, and has no evil in his heart. This is because he has in his heart a pearl. Innocence and pearls are not to be dissolved in mud. So long as man is in his childhood, God wills that he shall be innocent. If one were to ask that enormous city, what is this, she would reply, it is my little one. Chapter 2 Some of his particular characteristics. The gamin, the street Arab of Paris, is the dwarf of the giant. Let us not exaggerate, this cherub of the gutter sometimes has a shirt, but, in that case, he owns but one, he sometimes has shoes, but then they have no solace, he sometimes has a lodging, and he loves it, for he finds his mother there, but he prefers the street, because there he finds liberty. He has his own games, his own bits of mischief, whose foundation consists of hatred for the bourgeois, his peculiar metaphors, to be dead is to eat dandelions by the root, his own occupations, calling hackney coaches, letting down carriage steps, establishing means of transit between the two sides of a street in heavy rains, which he calls making the bridge of arts, crying discourses pronounced by the authorities in favor of the French people, cleaning out the cracks in the pavement. He has his own coinage, which is composed of all the little morsels of worked copper which are found on the public streets. This curious money, which receives the name of lax rags, has an invariable and well-regulated currency in this little bohemia of children. Lastly, he has his own fauna, which he observes attentively in the corners, the ladybird, the death's head plant louse, the daddy long legs, the devil, a black insect, which menaces by twisting about its tail armed with two horns. He has his fabulous monster, which has scales under its belly, but is not a lizard, which has pustules on its back, but is not a toad, which inhabits the nooks of old lime kilns and wells that have run dry, which is black, hairy, sticky, which crawls sometimes slowly, sometimes rapidly, which has no cry, but which has a look, and is so terrible that no one has ever beheld it. He calls this monster the deaf thing. The search for these deaf things among the stones is a joy of formidable nature. Another pleasure consists in suddenly prying up a paving stone, and taking a look at the wood lice. Each region of Paris is celebrated for the interesting treasures which are to be found there. There are earwigs in the timber yards of the Ursulines, there are millpeds in the Pantheon, there are tadpoles in the ditches of the Champs de Mars. As far as sayings are concerned, this child has as many of them as Talleyrand. He is no less cynical, but he is more honest. He is endowed with a certain indescribable, unexpected joviality, he upsets the composure of the shopkeeper with his wild laughter. He ranges boldly from high comedy to farce. A funeral passes by. Among those who accompany the dead there is a doctor. "Hey there," shouts some street Arab, "how long has it been customary for doctors to carry home their own work?" Another is in a crowd. A grave man, adorned with spectacles and trinkets, turns round indignantly, you good for nothing, you have seized my wife's waist. Sir. Search me. Chapter 3 He is agreeable. In the evening, thanks to a few sous, which he always finds means to procure, the Homuncio enters a theatre. On crossing that magic threshold, he becomes transfigured. He was the street Arab, he becomes the TT.18 theaters are a sort of ship turned upside down with the keel in the air. It is in that keel that the TT huddle together. The TT is to the gamin what the moth is to the larva, the same being endowed with wings and soaring. It suffices for him to be there, with his radiance of happiness, with his power of enthusiasm and joy, with his hand clapping, which resembles a clapping of wings, to confer on that narrow, dark, fetid, sordid, unhealthy, hideous, abominable keel, the name of paradise. Bestow on an individual the useless and deprive him of the necessary, and you have the gamin. The gamin is not devoid of literary intuition. His tendency, and we say it with the proper amount of regret, would not constitute classic taste. He is not very academic by nature. Thus, to give an example, the popularity of Mademoiselle Mars among that little audience of stormy children was seasoned with a touch of irony. The gamin called her Mademoiselle Much Hide Yourself. This being bawls and scoffs and ridicules and fights, has rags like a baby and tatters like a philosopher, fishes in the sewer, hunts in the cesspool, extracts mirth from foulness, whips up the squares with his wit, grins and bites, whistles and sings, shouts and shrieks, tempers alleluia with matin turlurad, chants every rhythm from the de profundis to the jack pudding, finds without seeking, knows what he is ignorant of, is a Spartan to the point of thieving, is mad to wisdom, is lyrical to filth, would crouch down on Olympus, wallows in the dunghill and emerges from it covered with stars. The gamin of Paris is Rabelais in this youth. He is not content with his trousers unless they have a watch pocket. He is not easily astonished, he is still less easily terrified, he makes songs on superstitions, he takes the wind out of exaggerations, he twits mysteries, he thrusts out his tongue at ghosts, he takes the poetry out of stilted things, he introduces caricature into epic extravaganzas. It is not that he is prosaic, far from that, but he replaces the solemn vision by the farcical phantasmagoria. If Adam Astor were to appear to him, the street Arab would say, "Hi there." The bugaboo. Chapter 4 He may be of use. Paris begins with the lounger and ends with the street Arab, two beings of which no other city is capable, the passive acceptance, which contents itself with gazing, and the inexhaustible initiative, prud'homme and fouilleux. Paris alone has this in its natural history. The whole of the monarchy is contained in the lounger, the whole of anarchy in the gamin. This pale child of the Parisian faubourgs lives and develops, makes connections, grows supple in suffering, in the presence of social realities and of human things, a thoughtful witness. He thinks himself heedless, and he is not. He looks and is on the verge of laughter, he is on the verge of something else also. Whoever you may be, if your name is prejudice, abuse, ignorance, oppression, iniquity, despotism, injustice, fanaticism, tyranny, beware of the gaping gamin. The little fellow will grow up. Of what clay is he made? Of the first mud that comes to hand. A handful of dirt, a breath, and behold Adam. It suffices for a god to pass by. A god has always passed over the street Arab. Fortune labors at this tiny being. By the word fortune we mean chance, to some extent. That pygmy kneaded out of common earth, ignorant, unlettered, giddy, vulgar, low. Will that become an Ionian or a Boeotian? Wait, Currit Rhoda, the spirit of Paris, that demon which creates the children of chance and the men of destiny, reversing the process of the Latin potter, makes of a jug an amphora. Chapter V His frontiers. The gamin loves the city, he also loves solitude, since he has something of the sage in him. Urbis amati like Fuscus, ruris amati like Flaccus. To roam thoughtfully about, that is to say, to lounge, is a fine employment of time in the eyes of the philosopher, particularly in that rather illegitimate species of campaign, which is tolerably ugly but odd and composed of two natures, which surrounds certain great cities, notably Paris. To study the suburbs is to study the amphibious animal. End of the trees, beginning of the roofs, end of the grass, beginning of the pavements, end of the furrows, beginning of the shops, end of the wheelruts, beginning of the passions, end of the divine murmur, beginning of the human uproar, hence an extraordinary interest. Hence, in these not very attractive places, indelibly stamped by the passing stroller with the epithet, melancholy, the apparently objectless promenades of the dreamer. He who writes these lines has long been a prowler about the barriers of Paris, and it is for him a source of profound souvenirs. That close-shaven turf, those pebbly paths, that chalk, those pools, those harsh monotonies of waste and fallow lands, the plants of early market gardens suddenly springing into sight in a bottom, that mixture of the savage and the citizen, those vast desert nooks where the garrison drums practice noisily, and produce a sort of lisping of battle, those hermits by day and cutthroats by night, that clumsy mill which turns in the wind, the hoisting wheels of the quarries, the tea gardens at the corners of the cemeteries, the mysterious charm of great, somber walls squarely intersecting immense, vague stretches of land inundated with sunshine and full of butterflies, all this attracted him. There is hardly anyone on earth who is not acquainted with those singular spots, the glacier, the cunette, the hideous wall of Grenelle all speckled with balls, Montparnasse, the Fossos, Loops, Aubiers on the bank of the Marne, Montsouris, the Tumissoir, the Pierre Plate de Chatillon, where there is an old, exhausted quarry which no longer serves any purpose except to raise mushrooms, and which is closed, on a level with the ground, by a trapdoor of rotten planks. The Campagna of Rome is one idea, the banlieue of Paris is another, to behold nothing but fields, houses, or trees in what a stretch of country offers us, is to remain on the surface. All aspects of things are thoughts of God. The spot where a plain affects its junction with a city is always stamped with a certain piercing melancholy. Nature and humanity both appeal to you at the same time there. Local originalities there make their appearance. Anyone who, like ourselves, has wandered about in these solitudes contiguous to our faubourgs, which may be designated as the limbos of Paris, has seen here and there, in the most desert spot, at the most unexpected moment, behind a meagre hedge, or in the corner of a lugubrious wall, children grouped tumultuously. Fetid, muddy, dusty, ragged, dishevelled, playing hide and seek, and crowned with cornflowers. All of them are little ones who have made their escape from poor families. The outer boulevard is their breathing space, the suburbs belong to them. There they are eternally playing truant. There they innocently sing their repertory of dirty songs. There they are, or rather, there they exist, far from every eye, in the sweet light of May or June, kneeling round a hole in the ground, snapping marbles with their thumbs, quarreling over half-farthings, irresponsible, volatile, free, and happy, and, no sooner do they catch sight of you than they recollect that they have an industry, and that they must earn their living, and they offer to sell you an old woolen stocking filled with cockchafers, or a bunch of lilacs. These encounters with strange children are one of the charming and at the same time poignant graces of the environs of Paris. Sometimes there are little girls among the throng of boys, are they their sisters? Who are almost young maidens, thin, feverish, with sunburnt hands, covered with freckles, crowned with poppies and ears of rye, gay, haggard, barefooted. They can be seen devouring cherries among the wheat. In the evening they can be heard laughing. These groups, warmly illuminated by the full glow of midday, or indistinctly seen in the twilight, occupy the thoughtful man for a very long time, and these visions mingle with his dreams. Paris, center, banlieue, circumference, this constitutes all the earth to those children. they never venture beyond this. They can no more escape from the Parisian atmosphere than fish can escape from the water. For them, nothing exists 2 leagues beyond the barriers, Ivory, Gentilly, Arcueil, Belleville, Aubervilliers, Menilmontant, Choisy-le-Roi, Billancourt, Meudon, Issy, Vanvres, Sèvres, Puteaux, Neuilly, Gennevilliers, Colombes, Romainville, Chateau, Asnières, Bougival, Nanterre, Ingéen, Noisy-le-Sec, Nogent, Gournay, Drancy, Gonesse, the universe ends there. Chapter 6a